Welcome to the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, where we celebrate the craft of poetry. Each week we feature interviews with incredible poets, songwriters, and artists, including Olivia Gatwood, Safia El Hilo, Dana Gioia, and many more. We also feature periodic submitted poetry episodes. Visit viewlesswings.com to submit your original poetry. I'm your host, James Moorhead, Poet Laureate of Dublin, California, and author of Canvas, Portraits of Red and Gray, and The Plague Doctor. Hit subscribe and follow me on Instagram or Threads at Viewless Wings. Today on the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, I'm excited to share a bonus episode courtesy of Exploring San Francisco and award-winning travel writer Aaron Miller. I joined Aaron on a San Francisco cable car to share a poem I wrote inspired by the Cable Car Museum. Hop on a running board and hold on tight as we take a cable-powered journey up the iconic hills of San Francisco.
I'm Aaron Miller. Welcome to Exploring San Francisco. Thanks for listening to the show. We've got a really special bonus episode for you today. Now, when we were recording the Exploring San Francisco by Cable Car episode, we were looking for the perfect ending to that piece. And I thought it was going to be Fisherman's Wharf, Pier 39, overlooking the bay, the sunset, the fresh seafood. But then we heard about James Moorhead. Now, James Moorhead is the Poet Laureate of Dublin, California, not Ireland, and his muse is San Francisco. And we heard that he'd actually written a poem about the cable cars. So we called him up. James, crazy idea. Are you up for meeting us and reading your poem about the cable cars on the cable cars? He said yes. We met him at the top of Nob Hill, jumped on the cars together. Producer Jason hanging off the side for dear life with a microphone pointing at him, and he read us this poem. This is James Moorhead reading 9.5 miles per hour.
All right. 9.5 miles per hour. After the San Francisco Cable Car Museum. Caution, cable car crossing, stenciled yellow on asphalt outside a cavernous brick powerhouse. It all starts and ends here. 4 continuous loops, wire rope stretched tight by tension sheaves, turned precisely 9.5 miles per hour by winding machinery. Motors and gears, massive and dripping with grease, until night falls and cars sleep, when workers wake to splice worn cables in time for the morning rush. Gold Rush inventor Andrew Halliday dreamt of designs for carrying ore from mines to mills, and corseted ladies, men in top hats, children sporting their Sunday best up the steep, sandy slopes of San Francisco. He wrote of the great cruelty and hardship of horses pulling streetcars up rain-slicked cobblestones until one slipped, brakes failed, dragging the terrified standardbred down, leaving it mutilated between truck and rail. Halliday's cables fanned out, rattling in trenches past Union Square to Fisherman's Wharf, from Van Ness to Embarcadero. A century later, I wait at the base of Powell, listening to buskers drum on trash cans as 2 operators shove number 16 on a turnaround. I cling to a handrail right up front, feet balanced on a wooden running board, jostling with tourists smiling for selfies, with 2 distinct clangs on the cable car bell. Our driver pulls hard on a long iron grip so its jaw can clench cable as ratchet teeth chatter. Through an intersection we go, 9.5 miles an hour, chilled by wisps of fog, up and over Nob Hill. Yeah!
What is it about San Francisco that you love and that inspires your poetry?
I mean, the culture, the weather, the hills, the cable car that we're riding on. I mean, just all these elements are just so unique. It's like you can't find them anywhere else.
So I've heard that locals call the fog Carl. Have you written an ode to Carl yet?
I have not written an ode to Carl the Fog, although I've a couple times tried to work it in, and I thought, is anyone going to get it but San Franciscans? And that's the only thing that I've resisted of referencing him. Oh yeah, Carl. where I live in the East Bay was 95 degrees, and I come into San Francisco and it's 65. It's beautiful.
So what is it about poetry as a medium that attracted you to it?
It's such a compact art form where every single word matters, every single, even word, every phrase, every sound, the way it sounds, that you can incorporate it into a cable car ride. It's just like, unlike novels or other forms of artistry, it's just so compact and can capture so many things in such a small number of words. I just love the challenge of capturing beauty in a tiny number of words.
What's your origin story as a poet? How did you get into it?
Yeah, there was a 10th grade teacher that got me into poetry, where I had the typical high school view of poetry of I don't get it, it makes me feel dumb, it's boring, all those things. And then he introduced me to contemporary poets, and I was like, light bulb went off, and I went, oh, poetry can be anything you want it to be. And that my view is everybody loves poetry. They just may not have found the poetry that they love.
Yeah. Poetry, I think, is really powerful and to evoke a feeling in some ways that can't be described in words. Of course, you're using words as your art form, but combining them in such a way as to convey a feeling rather than a story necessarily. And I just feel like that's the perfect way to describe what this feels like. Because, sitting here with you, wind in my hair, outside, cruising through your city, it's pretty special.
Yeah, no, there's just a thing about being right up front on a cable car, hanging out front. There's a little element of perceived danger there, although it's safe. If you're careful, it's safe. But there is an element of not being so pristine. It's noisy. It's very mechanical. It's not this pristine, electric, silent experience. It is a really noisy, 100-year-old technology that still works today amazingly well, that requires precision and expertise by the operator to do correctly and safely. It's just cool. Cable cars are magical.
Cable cars are magical, and that's a magical poem. Thanks, man. Thanks for sharing this with us.
Yeah, it's great running into you on the cable car.
Right, let's ride off into the sunset now in our cable car.
Exactly.
If you'd like to hear more of James's work, just go and check out viewlesswings.com, and he's got a poetry podcast of the same name, Viewless Wings. Check it out right now. And please remember to listen to the full episode if you haven't already, and come back for more. We've got lots more coming up on Exploring San Francisco. Thanks for listening. I'm Aaron Miller. I'll see you next time.
I hope you enjoyed this bonus episode of the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast. Check out the Exploring San Francisco podcast. There are links in the show notes. We'll be back in September with more interviews and submitted poetry episodes. The Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast is written and produced by James Moorhead. You can follow me on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at Viewless Wings. Hit subscribe to be notified of every episode of the Viewless Wings Poetry Podcast, and spread the word with your poetry community.